Hello and welcome to the This Happened Today in History podcast for March 16th. I am your host, Mr. Miller. This podcast will cover a number of topics that happened on this date in history. Please visit the podcast webpage at thishappenedtoday.buzzsprout.com. There you can download the notes page, which will help you organize the information as well as develop your own ideas on how these events changed the world around us. If you're interested in hearing more, please consider subscribing so you will not miss out on what happens tomorrow in history. In 1926, Robert H. Goddard launched the world's first liquid-propelled rocket. His rickety contraption, with its combustion chamber and nozzle on top, burned for 20 seconds before consuming enough liquid oxygen and gasoline to lift itself off the launch rack. The rocket took off from a snowy field outside Worcester, Massachusetts, reaching a height of about 41 feet and a distance of about 184 feet. It was smashed on impact. Goddard and his wife Esther and a couple of assistants from Clark University, where he was a physics professor, were the only witnesses. The event did not even make local newspapers. Indeed, the reticent professor kept it secret for more than a decade. He only told a few people, and after a couple of weeks, he told Charles Abbott, the director of the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory. The Smithsonian had been funding Goddard since 1917 in the hope that his rocket could lift instruments above the atmosphere. The observatory's main program was measuring solar variability and output. In 2006, the Senate voted to raise the national debt ceiling to nearly $9 trillion. This might prevent the first ever default on U.S. Treasury notes. The debt limit increase is the fourth since President Bush took office, and the move will allow the government to continue paying for the more expensive governmental packages, like the war in Iraq, without raising taxes. The $9 trillion deficit will average out to about $30,000 per person. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gives Congress the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States. At first, Congress authorized each debt issuance, often for a specific purpose. For example, a 1902 law authorized debt issuance for construction of the Panama Canal. This ad hoc debt authorization scheme proved too difficult to maintain, and in 1939, Congress established the debt limit. This provided blanket authorization for debt issuance by the federal government as long as the limit was not breached. Recent debt limit bills passed by Congress have suspended the limit for a period of time instead of raising it by a specific amount. Under this process, the debt limit does not apply for a set period of time and then goes back into effect after the suspension period is over. Then, the previous limit is raised by the amount of debt that was accumulated during the suspension period. Since 1978, the debt limit has been raised or suspended more than 56 times. When Congress acted on the debt limit in November of 2015, the limit was suspended until March of 2017. At that time, the debt limit was at $19.8 trillion. Currently, Congress has suspended the debt ceiling until after the 2020 presidential election. It wants to avoid a repeat of the 2011 and 2013 debt crises during an election year. As a result, the U.S. debt exceeded $23 trillion in October of 2019. In 1915, the Federal Trade Commission was organized following the Federal Trade Commission Act in 1914. Its principal mission is the promotion of consumer protection and the elimination and prevention of what regulators perceive to be anti-competitive business practices. One of its roles is to enforce antitrust laws. The initial motivation for the creation and enactment into law of the FTC was the need to reinforce, regulate, and clarify in specific terms what the earlier Sherman Antitrust Act and the Clayton Antitrust Act prohibited. Both laws prohibit business practices that would limit or eliminate competition to the detriment of consumers, investors, and the economy in general. Widespread public outrage over abuses of these laws and ongoing anti-competitive business practices in violation of the earlier laws also impelled Wilson to take action against trusts and monopolies. At first, the FTC was charged with the responsibility of preventing or dissolving monopolies and to bring civil lawsuits against violators. Monopolies, by their nature, are anti-competitive and therefore injurious to consumer and investor interests and to the economy at large. A monopoly may dictate consumer prices, control quality, and distribution. In the ensuing decades, the American economy became more complex and flourished through technological innovation, increased productivity, and personal income. The opening of an increasing number of profitable foreign markets. The FTC likewise expanded and took on additional functions and responsibilities. You have been listening to the This Happened Today in History podcast for March 16th. I thank you for listening, and I hope that you have enjoyed learning about historical events from the past. Thank you to the following websites for their information regarding today's topics: thepeoplehistory.com, Robert Goddard at airanspace.si.edu, the debt ceiling at rpc.senate.gov, and the Federal Trade Commission at investopedia.com. The music used as the background track for this podcast is Americana, created by Kevin MacLeod on Incompetech.com. If you enjoyed this information and would like to hear more, please consider subscribing, as this will help keep the historical events in your feed in the morning each day. I hope you have a great day.